For more on this, I want to welcome Dr. Jodi Gold, who joins us. She is a psychiatrist and the director of the Gold Center for Mind, Health and Wellness in New York. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to understand the psychological side of this, because supporters of this ban point to cyberbullying, addiction, even so-called brain rot. How real are those risks? And what does research tell us about the dangers of social media for teenagers?
So the risks of social media are real. We all sort of know that. We know that excessive use of social media can be very bad for your mental health. And we know that people that are at risk for anxiety and depression, that social media can contribute to this. Having said that, I think this ban or this delay that Australia is doing is quite interesting because there's really some pros and cons to it. I think every child is different. So like the pros to this is that we're having this conversation, right? That it's an international dialogue on when social media should be used. I also think that it really is a delay, not a ban, which I like. I also like that the government's trying to help parents set limits, because we do know that kids need limits, and that it's been really hard for parents to set reasonable limits and find moderation. So I think that's wonderful. The challenges around this, though, are really about thinking about what the real cause is. Every child is different. I'm a little bit worried about secrecy and about things being less transparent. So I think it's really important. What we know about the research is that it's important to have a collaborative discussion around social media. So what I'm hoping that people are going to get out of this sort of delay is a discussion about how kids are using social media, because I think for many kids it's bad for them, and for other kids it can be connecting and positive. So I think that we're really all struggling with self-regulation, and it's critically important that we're all sort of having these discussions.
Yeah, it's interesting when you listen to teenagers, you definitely see various points of view, but certainly when you look at the surveys that have been done in Australia, more than 75% of the Australian public support this ban. What does that tell you about fears that parents have?
Oh, I think the fears are reasonable. What I like about this is that I'm all about delaying. I think that the idea, I mean, I wish in some level ways we could get rid of social media. We know that we can't. The idea of delaying it is really wonderful. The idea of, I think one of the positives is that we're trying to stress, at least create a dialogue where kids are trying to be offline and interacting more offline. I don't know how successful this delay or ban is going to be, because I do think that kids will find workarounds and it'll be a little bit more secretive, but I'm all for us setting limits. I think this is all about balance and moderation. One of the things I'm a little concerned about is that I do think we need to be teaching kids about regulation, and we need to be teaching kids how to use this productively. And I want to make sure that we're continuing to have these conversations. But honestly, I actually think this ban or this delay is a wonderful conversation starter for parents to be able to talk to their teenagers about their relationship with social media, because I think it's critically important, if you're a parent out there, to really understand how your child's using social media. And it's not just about social media, it's about their entire digital lives, whether it's watching shows or connecting or games. Really and truly, parents have to talk to their kids about their relationship. And if they're using it in a negative way, helping them to pull it back. And if they're using it in a positive way, cultivate it. But at the end of the day, it still needs to be used in moderation. So I think we're all craving this. So I love that Australia is starting this like international dialogue.
Yeah, and speaking of creating this international dialogue, there are other countries and unions representatives talking about also having a ban similar to this for young people. Do you think that is potentially something that most countries should look at based on the metrics we see when it comes to the success of this ban in Australia? Because they are saying that they're going to look at sleep and attention span. They're going to assess how effective this ban is. What do you think we could learn from it?
Oh, I think we can learn a lot from it. What I want to be clear about, though, is that things like sleep and mental health, we need to be talking about anyway. Social media isn't the cause of mental health problems, nor is it the cause of sleep problems. I think it can worsen it. I want to make sure that we have a dialogue on social media, but that we're also having a broader dialogue on sort of, because I think kids go to social media when they're struggling with their mental health. I think that social media interferes with sleep, but a lot of things interfere with sleep. So I think that it'll be interesting to see the impact of this. I think a lot of kids are going to to stay on social media because I think they'll find workarounds, but that's okay. Teenagers have always been doing that. I think it's sort of thinking about developmentally. I mean, they're really shifting the conversation from being on social media in sort of middle school, middle years versus high school. And I do sort of like the idea of pushing it. I don't know if we'll see sort of the impact in social media, in sleep and mental health, but I also think it's time for us to, we've been like in this guinea pig generation for a while where we've been swinging back and forth. And I'm excited to see that we're being thoughtful about how much social media people should be on and how they're using it. So I suspect that other countries will sort of follow the lead here, but I don't think this is the full-on solution. Like, I think delaying entry into social media is wonderful, but we really do need to teach kids how to use it. We need to be talking about mental health. We need to be talking about positive body image and sleep. We need to be talking about all of these things, not just social media.
And it's just interesting when you see a couple of teenagers using their voice to take this case to the High Court of Australia. Yeah. They are against this ban. They say that not only does it silence them, but also it's not great for democracy. What happens when young people feel like they're silenced or excluded?
Well, I mean, we can make an argument about democracy and at what age kids, democracy is applied to. I do love that they're using their voice. I love that they're advocating. I think what they point out to, which I really want to point out to all the parents around the world, is that there are positive ways of using social media. There are kids who use social media to connect, to get support for mental health. There's definitely that piece to it. And that is our goal. Our goal is to use it in moderation and sort of help people to connect. I just love that they're advocating. I don't know that I agree with everything they're saying, but I love that they're advocating. Teenagers have always been finding workarounds. I don't necessarily think that this is going to result in people really getting on social media that much later, but I think it opens up a dialogue on the dangers of social media and really opens up, I'm hoping, a dialogue on how to use social media. Since we know it's not going away, and we know that they're not even banning all of the social media platforms, they're just banning some of them. Kids will still be able to be on social media, but I think we're not, that's the truth. The truth is kids are still going to be on it. They can be on other people. I'm a little bit worried about more secrecy, which is never good for teenagers, but I respect the teenagers advocating for what they think is a good idea. And I do think that general bans don't always work, but I like it as like a first step to thinking about how to use social media in moderation. So I'm proud of these kids for being advocates. I hope other countries will think about holding tech companies accountable for how we use social media, but we all need to be having conversations. At the end of the day, it's about helping teenagers find self-regulation, find balance, use social media appropriately. I mean, as adults, we're struggling with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So of course, kids with developing brains are struggling. So I think it's important to say that it's not just kids that are struggling with this. I mean, I struggle with it. I'm sure most of the people out there struggle with it. So I think it's important for your kids to know that you struggle with it. And what I really want to come out of this is for parents to have something to talk about with their kids. Like, it's not easy to talk to teenagers about social media or to try to get them off their phones.
Yeah.
Maybe this ban or delay will give people gives parents an opportunity to say, hey, how do you use this? Do you think it's healthy for you? Are you comparing yourself too much? Or are you using it in this wonderful way? So I'm hoping it's a conversation starter. I don't know that I really agree with the democracy debate. I do agree that it doesn't really work to push kids into secret. I mean, the kids will find workarounds.
Sure. I do imagine other platforms may develop as a result of this ban, but we'll wait and see. Jodi Gold, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.